So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sepouh Abrahamian. Yeah, thank you for having me here. Actually, first when the team called me up and asked whether I could do a speech here, I was kind of surprised. I was rather surprised. A lot of questions arose, a lot of important ones, like, what took you so long, guys? I was waiting for this. No, I'm just joking. I'm very honoured to be here. I'm very honoured to speak to an audience like yours. And yeah, like I said before, my name is Sepouh Abrahamian. I'm 25 years old, and I've spent 21 years growing up here in the Netherlands. So, upon reading the underlying theme for this evening, my home far away from home, by the way, I honestly hope that I interpreted it correctly, because there's a lot of ways to interpret that. Actually, the first thought that came up to me was homemade dolma. Homemade dolma and globalization. And and what I would like to discuss with you today is one dimension of globalization, which is the cultural dimension. So, contemporary globalization, the way we know it, the way you all commonly refer to, is actually a Western model. And not even a Western model, it's actually an Anglo-Saxon model. This is what we actually can tell about globalization, as well as the fact that both supporters and anti-globalists agree on one thing, which is globalization is an inevitable process. Now, no one can actually tell you when globalization actually started. No one can actually pinpoint a moment in time where globalization just kicked in. Actually, one could even argue that at the very start, at the very beginning, before civilizations were actually formed and created, actually the world was perfectly global. I mean, just think about it. No borders, no differences in languages, no any barrier of the sort. Actually, in other words, you can say that a very, very long time ago, the whole world was, in fact, Armenian. So, what is also of the essence concerning globalization? The presence of a force or institution which enjoys hegemony. As in this case, the hegemonous entity is the Western civilization, which pretends to some universal validity. Now, don't get confused over that. I'll explain that. Don't worry. I'm here for you. Don't worry. Globalization leans on these four pillars. One is the economic, one is the political, one is the, let's see, what was it again? Ecological, and of course the cultural, as I mentioned before. Well, the economic, Andy, is a capitalist Western model. The cultural, obviously, is the universalization or is the universalization of the modern Western values. As in, you should like think. Maybe you could think of democracy being a virtue, or you know, working 8 hours a day is the norm. You can't complain about it. You know, it's that it is what it is. The political dimension actually is inherent to these two former dimensions, because if you're establishing a world economy, you need governance to go along with that, right? And the ecological one stems from the idea that we own the world we live in, but from practice and from reality, we've seen that Western civilization mainly is the main contributor as well as the main profiteer. Now, on the other side, there's these anti-globalists, which mainly oppose this particular model, this Western model. The anti-globalists, or like my good old friend Ronald Reagan would say, commie scum, they are in fact building their arguments on the inequality and poverty. So, because it's evident that Their critique of the number of people living in poverty has grown. And the integration of global banking leaves the third world in fear of an ever-present contagion effect, and the world's capital, even though we have free flow of capital, the capital is still mainly distributed through the industrialized countries. And even the net trade effect, the net effect of trade. Poor countries are forced to lower their prices, whereas they relatively pay higher for their imports, and causing them eventually to be worse off. Now, let's not dwell too much on this. Let's not dwell on this too long, because they're really going to kick me out if I talk longer than 10 minutes. But let's try to see if this makes sense. The Armenian diaspora has been traditionally well integrated in Western countries, and we as young professionals are by no means an exception. And we have embraced Western ethics and values, and we have grown in these education systems, and by all means we have participated in this ongoing process of globalization. This capitalist global economy, this global village, in which they are obviously losers and winners. The stakes for Armenia aren't that high. The Armenians don't look good in this one, guys. We are commonly referred as the losers in this game, and obviously the industrialized West is the winner here. And here's where we find the paradox. As we love the dolma from our country, which is a product of our country, we also love the values that we have received in this part of the world. And these values have become a part of our professional lives, and may even have become parts of our personal lives. And these traits that we have come by are an integral part of this accelerated way of globalization. Even more so, these values are even accelerated by local entities. I mean, look, just think of governments or crazy people that want to push over, they want to push democracies all over the world, or internet, media, whatever you can think of. But this poses problems for a people that is strongly connected to its own country, like we have. It's bound to cause friction in our values. Don't worry, I got it. So the question is, would it be fair? Would it be fair to dictate Western values to a country like Armenia? I honestly don't know. And would it be wrong or right to tell an Armenian how to run their business? I mean, I really don't know, because would it be? You might be helping them, or you might be not. And would it be a good thing or a bad thing to, if we make clear what Western values and virtues and ethics are to Armenians? Again, I have no clue, I swear to God. But what I do know, and what I honestly believe, is that Armenia has, I mean, not just Armenia, by the way, every country in the world has its right to find its own path to globalization. We should enable Armenia to globalize in its most natural ways. And we should be enforcing that. Because in the end, it doesn't really matter where you live, but it only matters what you live for. Thank you.